In a time and place when you can work from anywhere.
Two ladies in their mid to late 27s fell behind on their podcast.
And they're calling it, hey, didn't we used to have a podcast called Workationing?
The ladies are filling you in on the last of their 2017 adventures.
Kari goes cage diving with sharks.
Kelly gets stranded in Boston.
God damn it, I did it again.
And the ladies get ready to move to Amsterdam.
You know, expatriation is kind of a bitch.
This is the Workationing Podcast.
All right, so we are back. Sorry about that.
You know, life comes at you fast sometimes.
It really does. We have had just a hell of a couple months, and considering you guys have been on this journey with us, so you know we don't say that lightly.
No. We've had all kinds of different months. Remember that month in Acapulco? That was a real hell of a time.
It was, and yet we managed to record podcasts.
We did. So if that's any indication of how just completely backed up and busy and slammed business-wise, but also with achieving our goals, in some cases slower than we might have expected. And we're going to get into all of that with this giant recap episode. It might even be a series of episodes.
Yeah, we're just going to dive in and we're just going to see what happens.
Yeah.
Keep it real for the people.
Right. Maybe let's just go through it, because we have literally how many pages of notes? 3, 4, 7 pages of notes.
Oh.
On how far we've
And believe
come
we
and
don't
what we've
actually
done.
really outline our episodes. We just kind of,
Yeah.
we take some quick notes.
Yeah.
We jot some things down and then we just kind of let her rip. I think maybe people can sense that. But anyways.
Okay. We had to document and just kind of go down memory lane and say, what have we been missing? So I guess let's start off with where we left off, huh?
Well, I feel like first, before we even go there, we should probably start off with a confession.
Mea culpa?
Yes. So we've been called out for this a few times already by some of our more avid listeners.
Yeah, some fans have been like, hey guys, question about the timeline.
Right. So if you follow us on Facebook, or if you know us, or if you just have been paying attention, you may have noticed that our podcast tends to be released a good 4 to 6 weeks after the events actually occur.
Right. And we did that strategically early on because we started popping a lot of downloads from all over the place. And we were posting Instagram shots, and some of our friends were like, hey guys, you concerned about your safety at all? Any of those internet stalkers? And really, like, there are probably better people to stalk. I'm sure of it. In fact,
well, there are, but the thing that became apparent to us was that as we started traveling, we realized that when we went to places like Puerto Rico or Medellin or Acapulco, that we were a lot more visible than we thought that we were.
Right. We looked a lot different than other people. Yeah.
And so we didn't think it was the best idea to give really specific details in real time about where we were. And we wanted to be specific. We wanted to not have to watch that. So just for safety reasons, because we were two women traveling alone with a bunch of electronics, and it just seemed like a good idea to maybe slow that down a little bit. And so we did that. Also, I think that to be honest, as we were going through the journey of last year, things were changing so quickly and the revelations were coming on fast and furious. And I felt like it was more difficult to tell the story in real time than it was to take a minute and let it settle and be like, okay, what was the takeaway? I feel like it just ended up being a more coherent narrative.
Right.
And we didn't get all bogged down in weird stuff. And so I felt like at the time that was a great way to handle the podcast. And I'm glad that we did.
But then it became really easy to just be like, you know what? We've been working 16-hour days. It's okay. The podcast is on delay. We'll catch them up later. And so that's what we did, and then found ourselves in a bit of a podcast hole, content hole that we've got to dig ourselves out of. So
we're a few months behind, and we want to get you guys all caught up. And the big reason we want to do that is partly because we know we've gotten your letters. Thank you for caring.
Hey, we're still alive.
We're sorry we let you down on this one, but we're coming back. And also, there's so many amazing things coming right now and going on right now that we want to be talking about in real time. And we want to get to that stuff. So we're just going to get you all caught up. It's going to be great. And then it's going to be kind of a new workationing podcast. I think we're kind of shifting focus, and you'll see how that happens. And I'm really, really excited about it because we're not traveling full time right now, but this part of the journey with expatriation and all of that is every bit as challenging and crazy and insane as what we went through last year. And I'm really excited to share that with you guys.
We are still having adventures there, just of a different kind.
Yes.
So
we stay finding those adventures.
So we left Amsterdam on October 20th.
Yes.
Because we had to go to Boston to run PR and social media for a conference out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did that, and that was an experience. And then we had about a week to pack up all of our stuff and sell it, right? Because we had left everything in 2 10x10 storage facilities.
Well, you had a week. I was going to go home. I had more time at home, but you were only going to be home for a week.
Right. So I had a week to figure out what to do with my stuff. And thank you to the people who helped me and continue to help me over time sell all of the things that were in that storage shed. Because when we first started out on workationing, Kelly and I were not sure if this was even going to work out. We had no idea what we were getting into.
No, and it didn't seem prudent to like sell all my worldly possessions at that juncture.
No, I mean, you can have an insurance policy. And for me, that insurance policy was all of your stuff and your car is still in New Hampshire. So you can go back and get that anytime you want. So if at any point to me, workationing became too much, or I decided that I didn't really like traveling anymore, or for whatever reason, you and I didn't want to live together, which is understandable because we also work together and we're also best friends. So that's kind of like a lot of in your face one-on-one time with one person all the time.
Listen, I was it's hard to bet on that working. Somehow it did.
It did. Yeah, right. But we weren't sure. And so if at any point it became too much for me, I knew that I could always tap out and go back to New Hampshire, regroup, and figure out what my next step was going to be. And you had a similar insurance policy, except for yours was in Ohio.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was glad to do it. It was really, I know that I'm sure you, I was there, so I know you had this experience. And then I had it on my own separately in Ohio. But I can't really describe the sensation of opening up the door of that storage unit. And it was like my whole old life was in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Remember, we found my wedding photos in mine.
Right? And the amount of just weird anxiety that comes from that. And I really didn't even want to deal with it. I know you didn't really either, but I was like, I really can't just pay for this stuff that I know I don't want this stuff anymore.
Right.
Like there's no version of my future that involved me moving back to Ohio at that point. And so And this isn't great stuff. Half of this shit stuff that I like, my like post college shitty furniture, you know what I mean? Like half of it. So like that, like, am I gonna really pay to move this couch that I probably found on the side of the road somewhere?
For me, it came back to that a couple of frogs were sitting on a log. Your brother Kevin loves to tell this story or anecdote. And how does it go?
So 3 frogs are sitting on a log and one decides to jump off. How many frogs are still on the log?
How many?
3, because deciding doesn't do shit.
Right.
You got to actually jump.
So I had a real frog on a log moment where I was looking at all of this shit that had been in storage, and I shouldn't say shit. I hand selected this stuff over the course of many years. This was my life in a storage shed, or at least my old life in a storage shed. And I had a lot of anxiety about getting rid of it all. But once I decided to do it, all of a sudden, it like my mindset shifted. And suddenly, instead of I have a lot of anxiety over all of this stuff that I, bought for a reason at some point in time and like well enough to save before going on this workationing adventure, all of the anxiety just kind of went away, and it became this stuff no longer serves a purpose in my life. So why am I clinging to it? Why am I hanging on to it with white knuckles and don't want to let it go? But for what? Because what purpose is it serving except for costing me $120 a month to occupy space in a storage facility? I don't need that safety net, because it's not a safety net. It's like an anchor dragging me down.
Exactly. But I had the same problem. You had to deal with it in a week, which is probably good because you just had to rip that Band-Aid. I went home for a week, and then I went back a few weeks later for 6 weeks. And so I had all of this time, and believe that I thought about that storage unit almost every moment of every day, but also believe that I did not handle it until the last day before I was leaving.
It's a real pickle Rick situation, because as a result of you not handling that early on, you had to deal with the anxiety of, oh my God, what am I going to do with this stuff? Oh my God, how am I going to feel about letting it go? Like, oh my God, I have to deal with this in the goddamn first place. You had to deal with that for the full 6 weeks or 5 weeks, or until however long it took for you to address the problem. And what I have come to realize, and what I am really focusing on, is like, let me relieve myself of that anxiety by just ripping the Band-Aid off. Let me eat that frog first. I will do that thing that I don't want to do because like I think about it all the time and I've been putting it off for too long. Like, fuck it, just do it. And then you don't have to think about it anymore.
Right. And when it's done, it's done. And doing the thing didn't change anything because I had already decided I didn't want this stuff. It was like the act of letting go of it that was really difficult.
Right.
But the second that I did, I gave away a bunch of stuff, and then everything that was left, I literally just called a giant dump truck, and into this went everything, like all kinds of shit. I'm sure there were all sorts of things that if I'd actually looked at them in those boxes that I would have been like, oh no, I need to like go squirrel this away in my mom's basement and just keep it there in case I want to look at it one day and have a little member berry. Like,
right. Remember?
You remember? But like, I didn't, and it went away, and I felt fucking amazing. And the next day I started my journey to Amsterdam with 2 bags.
Yes. So here's how this went down. Kelly and I flew to Boston, managed PR and social media with some other members of the team for a few days. I spent a week in New Hampshire clearing out my life to the best of my ability. You know, there's still some odds and ends as you might expect there to be. But I had a week to do all of that. At the end of that week, what I had was the international carry-on, that tiny little bag that I had been traveling the world with for the last year, and then a larger suitcase that had all of my clothes and a Rosie the Riveter New York Post vintage. I think it's art. I like it. It's up on the wall in the apartment now. But Rosie came with me. She inspires me, and I was going to take her on this journey. So I packed her in that suitcase, and that was all that I had. All of my life was in a large suitcase and a small suitcase. And then I met up with you in Boston. What did you have with you? You didn't have your whole life in...
No, because I was able to leave some stuff in Ohio. But so I flew back out. I went home for that week just because for me to stay in New Hampshire, like I would have had to get a hotel, or I would have had to impose on Carrie's friends. And at that point, Carrie had gone home a couple times, and people had come out. I had seen basically no one.
Right.
And had not gone home at all. So I was like, how about I take this opportunity to pop home real quick? And I did. But when I came back, I met Kari in Boston so that we could drive up to the Catskills together. And she came and picked me up at the airport in her tiny little BMW. And like, just the hilarity that ensued.
Okay, so Zoe is my car. She is a BMW Z4 convertible. In this particular model of vehicle, it's a 2-door number with 0 backseat, because I like to signal that I am child-free and also cannot help you move.
Right. Like,
you know?
Not your girl.
You know who's not going to take lead on carpool?
You're like, I can barely help you go to the grocery store.
I can barely grocery shop myself, you know? And so Zoe is super tiny, and then you put the top down, and there's like basically 0 trunk space. You can fit like 4 small grocery bags in the back of Zoe when the top is down. So Kelly and I was moving my whole life. So I had a large suitcase and a carry-on, and even with the top up, that about maxed out my cargo space. Now,
and we're talking cargo space. When she pulled up, she had multiple bags in the front seat where I was supposed to sit too, and then also me and my carry-on and my backpack also needed to be in that front seat.
There was a lot in the cab.
And I'm not the tiniest person.
No, Kelly's 5'10", and
like amply, luxuriously appointed.
Your top knot hit the top of my interior roof.
Right? Oh, gosh. But anyway, so I jammed myself in there with all of that stuff, and somehow we made it, and it was actually a very pleasant trip. We drove through the mountains. It took us like 5 hours, but it actually wasn't really that bad.
No, and you, to be clear, could not fit an additional sock in that car.
No, absolutely
not.
We
had it comically packed to the gills, and I don't think that kind of car is supposed to have that much weight in it, but whatever, she did great. And we got to drive to the Catskills. My friend Jackson, who I've known since college, I love Jackson. He lives out in New York City, but he has what he calls a cabin out in the Catskills in the mountains of New York. And so we drove up there. It took about 5 hours, and the last like hour and a half was what I would call extremely remote.
Yeah, it had a rustic vibe.
It was the off season in the Catskills, which is like a ski town.
Yeah, those hills had eyes, man.
They did. There were no street lights. It was starting to get dark. It was around sunset. I was worried we were going to get lost and or stuck and or have some sort of issue, and the coyotes were going to get us.
Yeah, it was pretty intense, but we got there and the place was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Really, really nice house and so quiet. Like, I just have never been anywhere so quiet in my life. And it was, we were feeling just so exhausted. It had been an insane year and we had just been traveling and going nonstop, and it was conferences and flying in between cities and doing all of this stuff. And like, we were just, I can't remember ever being as worn down as I was as when we rolled into the Catskills.
No. And at that same time, we had pretty much decided before we left Amsterdam that we were going to move here. And in order to do so, we needed to create a Dutch company. And so the process of incorporating Workationing BV, which is the Dutch equivalent of, let's say, an LLC in the US, the process of incorporating that and securing visas for immigration required an additional immigration attorney, an additional business attorney, and our team of accountants.
Right? Like, I'm going to have to send more Christmas cards to like professional service providers than I am going to have to my big ass family this year.
Right. And you know what is they all like to have meetings. And then after those meetings, you've got to email them. They've got some emails that you need to read and that you need to respond to. And so that process was really exhausting and it was confusing.
And we were out of the country. That's what really sucked, is that we're like, all right, let's move to another country, and believe that just like everything Kari and I ever decide to do, we decided this with really no pre-planning or research. We just decided we were going to do something, and then you literally couldn't stop us.
No, well, I mean, there are advantages, which we should probably save for an entirely different podcast episode. But we discovered that there were some advantages to creating a Dutch company, and also just like the Amsterdam lifestyle. And again, we'll get into all of that.
Right. But we were trying to do all of this from the US. And so we were doing something that we didn't know how to do with, we had lawyers and accountants, but they were out here. They're 6 hours ahead of us. We don't know how to do any of this. Oh, by the way, you think it's hard to find an apartment in somewhere like New York City? Amsterdam could give that place a run for its money.
Yes.
And we also needed to find a place to live. And we were not going to be able to, like in the US, if you get an apartment and you rent it for a while and then you move out, and then it'll sit empty for like a week or two while people like clean it or whatever. Not so here. Somebody moves out on the 31st and someone else moves in on the 1st, and they don't even put it on the market until about 30 days or less before they need a new tenant, because they don't have to wait. Like somebody's going to come.
Right. And so there are Facebook groups devoted to this, just like house hunting or apartment hunting in Amsterdam. There are apps for this. It is a highly competitive market. You know what there aren't too many of is expat rental services with a lot of inventory. And what we came up against was our guy Klaus, who hooked us up with our first apartment, was unable to secure us any kind of apartment, his inventory was just low, and the inventory across the city was low and turns out still is low.
Well, we were also looking at a pretty high demand area. We really wanted to be as close to like the city center as possible. So just imagine so basically we were trying to get an apartment without even being able to see it. Also, we're Americans. P.S. Nobody really wants to rent to expats, actually.
No, you will see apartment listings out here that say Dutch only all the time. Apparently that's legal out here.
I guess so, or at least it's very common. Yeah, they don't want to rent. So we just had like a lot of logistical issues to deal with in the Catskills.
For that reason, they will not rent an apartment to you unless they can see it in person. There's none of this sight unseen crap that you can get anywhere else I've ever heard of. And not in Amsterdam. And the reason why is because the landlords really want to look you over. And you're up against like 7 to 10 other people who also want that apartment too. So like it basically comes down to who the landlord likes the best. So you best believe that you're dressing up on apartment looking day. Mm-hmm. We weren't able to do that because we were in the U.S. And so we had to have, friends look at apartments for us, and we ended up finding a place sight unseen, but we sent one of our more respectable looking friends in to scope the place out, kind of like vouch for our legitimacy, and then we were able to get that process rolling. But when I first stepped into this apartment on December 1st, when our lease started, that was the first time I had ever seen the place.
Yeah, and that was crazy. So we'll talk more about the apartment in a little bit, because this is our new spot. But yeah, that just the process of getting this place was wild, and so that's what we were dealing with.
We were dealing with all of that in the Catskills, and we were in the Catskills for almost a month, and 3 weeks.
No, like 2.5 weeks.
2.5 weeks. Listen, my timelines are just all the days blend together.
I know. Yeah, it was only like 2.5 weeks, but it was a great break. Jackson was honestly like the best host ever. He came and hung out with us on the weekends.
He brought us New York coffee.
He did. That was much appreciated.
He had a cute dog, or has a cute dog, Pete.
Yeah.
So it was fun to get some animal time in.
It was, but to be real, honestly, I think that you kept like coming into rooms and finding me just like staring off into the distance. Like it was so quiet there and so chill that we just worked and like slept, and it was so needed.
I slept so well there.
I did too. It was really great. And it was a really great way for us to kind of like cap off the workationing year, because at that point, we even talked about it while we were there. We were getting like weirdly anxious about you would think we would be like ready for some like time apart. But I was like, what am I going to do without you? Because we were going to be with each other for just like 6 weeks while I went back home for a while.
Over the holidays.
Yeah. And it was just like, I don't know. It was a nice period at the end of that sentence, because that last year was the coolest year of my entire life. And it was really nice to just process with you. And also like Aguada, where we started, was a very kind of like calming spa, like, an introspective environment. And like that was really the vibe. And it was kind of nice to end it on that note as well.
The Catskills absolutely provided that. Jackson was such a doll for letting us stay there.
He really was. No, so nice. Like ridiculous. He is the best.
Jackson, we owe you a solid.
We sure do.
And an invite out to Amsterdam.
Absolutely. Anytime, my friend.
So we left the Catskills, and you drove my car.
Yeah, I drove you to some bus because we had to get you to New York City.
We're in the middle of the Catskills in the off season, okay? Like just picture this mountain town with nobody in it.
Right. Mess.
And like it's just nobody in it. And so Kelly and Jackson's like, oh, you can just take the bus into New York City. That's probably the easiest way. And I'm like, I can't even tell you the last time I was on a bus.
Right. No, and I was like hoping when I dropped you off, I was like, I hope that works out for you. Like fingers crossed.
So Kelly takes me. Kelly's going to drive my car to Boston and then catch a flight from Boston, and one of my other friends, Bumps, was going to come down, pick up my car, and deal with all of that. So we had like this whole logistical thing planned out, right? And so it starts with me getting on this bus in the Catskills on some, like, I guess this was the main street, but there was like literally nobody there. And I was just like, is this bus going to come? I feel like I'm on a movie set right now.
I was like, is this a ghost bus?
Right? I was just like, okay, so I'm going to do this now, I guess.
Like, and next stop, hell. Like, it was intense. And it was like an old-timey looking bus, too. And I was just like, all right.
So the bus stop is just this stick in the street. And I'm like, so this is where you leave me.
Right. She's like, good luck. Goodbye. We like had to say goodbye there, too, which was like sad because I really did feel like I was just like abandoning you on the side of the road.
I was trying to be
brave. At least wait till the bus came.
Jackson told me it was fine. And I believe him, or I believed him enough to get on that bus. And so I did. And there was no Wi-Fi on it. There was 0 cell phone reception. And so I got to take that opportunity. I think it was like a couple hour, might have even been 3-hour bus ride from the Catskills to New York City. And in that time, I got to think of and reflect on all of my experiences over the previous year and, consider, was it actually worth the jump for me to take the leap into this whole workationing adventure? And like, without a doubt, with no hesitation, the answer for me is yes. And then looking back at all of the ways that, you and I have evaluated our lives and the way that we approach things and talking about intentional living, I'm really proud of how far we've come. And I'm very excited to continue down that road and then also lead reader or listeners down that road as well, because we've gotten a lot of great feedback about that in particular.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. So I was then driving to Boston, and it was like a kind of time of reflection and just nostalgia. It was only a year ago, but even as last year was happening, I knew we would say it all the time. I was like, this is it. Like, these are going to be the days that I look back on. Like, these are the glory days. Like, and I was so grateful that we gave that to ourselves.
Yes.
And it was really amazing. I had already gone home for like a quick week. But I just saw like my closest friends and like my mom. But I was returning home like on a bigger scale, and I was going to see a lot more people that I hadn't seen. And like going back and just realizing, I remembered the day that we left, I really felt like when I was saying goodbye to my family, like back on January 1st, I felt like I might die. Like I felt like I might die on this trip and never see them again. I had this weird feeling that I would never see them again. And I realized, especially after I went back, that like in some ways I did die. I went home and I was still Kelly, and everyone that loved me still loved me, and all of those relationships that were so wonderful before were still wonderful. But like the person that I came back as was like a fundamentally different human, and I'm grateful for that.
And 85 pounds lighter,
right?
Like not fundamentally, internally a different person, but externally as well.
Right. And that was fun. You know what I mean? It's kind of fun to go back and be like, ha, look at me now. Right. You know what I mean? And, everyone was so sweet and supportive, and that was great. But yeah, I had the same feeling, just so much gratitude that we did it, because it was the scariest thing I'd ever done, and it was worth every second.
I think that that's true of a lot of scary things that people are afraid to do. They've got this idea or this goal, or maybe they can get there, but what if they don't? And there's a lot of what ifs, and the what ifs keep you from actually like taking that jump. And it is scary. It's really scary to make a jump while you're midair and you're not sure if you're going to stick the landing.
Right.
And, the whole time you're freaking out. You're just like, oh, shit. Am I going to like make it? I don't know.
Yeah, I had no idea. And I had a million fears. I was afraid I would run out of money because I didn't really know what that looked like to travel all the time. I was afraid that like something bad would happen, that we would get robbed or hurt or something. I don't know. And there was just this sort of like amorphous kind of fear that like wasn't really about anything, but it's just like, what I'm beginning to recognize is like the body's physiological response to like change. Like I've talked about this before, but my dad always said that the strongest force in the universe is habit. And so when you literally just light your whole life on fire and are like, bye, like I'm getting on this plane and I have literally no plan. Like,
right. I don't know where I'm going to live next month.
Yeah. Right. Sometimes you were like, where are we living in 3 days? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. I was there.
We got to get out of this country.
Like, no, our visas are going to expire.
And that was a crazy experience. And yeah, it's just your body's response to that. There's literally no way to do any of these things without experiencing just a lot of like sheer terror. And that's just like part of it. And you've got to just like embrace it, because that's the only way. We never would have done any of that. I never would have watched those storms over the mountains in Medellin. I never would have swam in the Bio Bay. I never would have seen John Wayne's sex dojo. I never would have done any of that if I had let that fear rule me.
Pushing through that, I think, is what enables you to make progress, not just towards your goals, but also as a person.
Yeah.
And again, like sometimes when you're spinning around really, really fast and you're working really hard and you're trying and you're not sure if you're going to stick that landing, right? And you're just like spinning. It's difficult to tell if you are spiraling upward or spiraling downward. And that is a question that we asked ourselves many times throughout this workationing process. Are we spiraling? Okay, is it a good spiral or a bad spiral? You know?
Right? It's like, what's happening? Because sometimes we'd find ourselves in these just insane situations. We talk about Pickle Rick all the time, which is, if you are a Rick and Morty fan, you know exactly what that is. If you're not a Rick and Morty fan, you need to fix that.
Watch this episode at least.
But it's basically a metaphor without going into the whole, it would be insane to describe that episode and it would make no sense. But basically, it's a metaphor for putting yourself into it, and I see this. It's a tendency, I think, especially among like intelligent people. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like that. But you do this thing where it's like, I am going to make this situation as difficult for myself as possible. And then I am going to show my intelligence by dealing with all of these impossible problems. And look at how I solved these and I'm fine. But in the meantime, you're like ignoring real basic shit.
Right.
Just the basic day to day. And it's really easy to pickle Rick yourself when you're doing shit like getting on a plane to Colombia without doing any research about what that experience might be like.
Pickle Rick.
Pickle Rick. So sometimes we were like operating at this really high level, just like solving problems. But it was also like, what are these problems?
Why are we in Acapulco right now?
Right. Like, why are these problems that I have?
Santi told us not to come here. Yes, the flights were cheap. It wasn't a Flow Rida video. None of these things redeem Acapulco as a workationing or just destination in general, really.
Right. And it's hard because, to be real, all of my favorite stories from the last year come as a result of us not researching something or getting ourselves into some kind of crazy situation we shouldn't have been in, being somewhere we definitely shouldn't have been. You know, and
not us. You wouldn't kiss us anywhere we're not supposed to be.
And it was so fun, and I have like a lifetime of party stories, and it's fucking great. But like at the same time, by the end of the year, as wonderful as that all was, I think we were both like, okay,
like maybe chill out for a minute.
Yeah, like let's like
focus on the business that we're incorporating. How about that?
Right. Like, can I do normal still? You know? And suddenly we went from like crazy to just like all of a sudden it's like all admin shit, and it's just like,
yeah, been going to the gym a lot.
Yeah. So that's where we were. That was our drive kind of like away from each other. I think I didn't even know, we never talked about that, but I think it's cute that we were like having kind of like the same,
right?
Like a little, it was a good time to reflect.
Right. So at this point, I am on a bus to New York City, and Kelly is driving to Boston, and it's right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So here is what had happened.
What had happened was
this is actually something I've done multiple times in my life. For whatever reason, I am real bad about booking a plane, like a round trip plane ticket, and getting the wrong flight back. And just
you want to double check those dates, Gringas. Sometimes they're not refundable.
No, and I picked mine for like a week later. And so at some point while we were in the Catskills, I was like, well, motherfucker, and I got this great deal. I was so sad. So anyways, I was like, well, fuck. But I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal, right? Because it's like, well, I'm going to be close to Boston and New York. Like, I can for sure get to Cleveland.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, that's fine. Except that I look up tickets and all of a sudden it's right before Christmas. I mean, right before Thanksgiving. And I like the tickets are suddenly just $600 to fly from Boston to Cleveland. It's usually like $50. And I was just like, what the fuck? And the flight times were all screwy. And it was like I was going to show up at some weird time. And then like my family and friends are going to have to come get me at like 5 a.m. or something like that. And I was just like, well, that sucks. So my next plan is, well, you know what, though, is that I've got all the time in the world. I'm in no hurry. So why don't I take Carrie's car back to Boston? And then while I'm there, I was going to meet her friend Bumps at the airport anyways. I was like, I'll be at the airport. I will just rent myself a car. And I'll drive it to Ohio. And that sounded like a great idea, except that I got to the airport and I had not thought any of this through because, to be real, I was just getting on a plane, which to me is like basically like being at home. And then, you know what I mean? And then I was going to go to a friend's house and just stay there for 2 weeks. We weren't going, the whole plan was for us to do nothing. And then I was going to get back on a plane and go home. And so I brought like bare minimum shit. So I had a debit card with me and like that was it. And so then they're like, they wanted a credit card down for me to even take one of these cars. And then they didn't realize that I wanted to do it one way. Long story short, I ended up being like trapped in Boston with like no way to get home. And luckily, Carrie was generous enough to let me just ride Zoe on back to Ohio.
Yeah, I said, why don't you just take Zoe and you can have her for a month?
Well, and this was after, though, I had already driven like 5 hours in the wrong direction from home and then like got stuck at the airport forever. So it was like, and then I still, and so like it took me like another day to get there because I stopped somewhere overnight. And yet my journey was not nearly as much of a bitch as yours. You had a really long journey.
I did. So Kelly and I split up at that point. I had plans with Paul, the guy I was seeing at the time. You
might notice that past tense. We'll get to that.
Oh God, we'll save that one for later.
That old chestnut.
Just give me a minute, all right? God damn.
All right.
Fresh, you know. Okay, so anyway, Paul and I had booked these tickets to Cape Town, South Africa.
Which is so cool. I'd always wanted to go there. I was so jealous.
We did all kinds of awesome things and had a really great time. So I flew from New York City to Amsterdam, where Paul met me at the airport to join up with me on our flight to Cape Town. That was a solid 28 hours of flights. It was a direct flight from New York City to Amsterdam, which took forever. And then from Amsterdam to Cape Town took approximately forever in 3 days.
I am sure that it did. Because you somehow, like I still, with all of that, got back to Ohio before you got to South Africa.
And you stayed over in Scranton, too.
I did. I love a good Holiday Inn.
I love Scranton. It's a great halfway point between Boston and Pittsburgh or anywhere in Ohio, basically. And so I would make that drive a couple times a year and just chill out in Scranton for a night.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do in that city.
I did get like the cheapest manicure of my life there, but it was also the worst. So
I don't know. That Mexican Walmart in Acapulco was,
right.
I would say, the worst manicure.
I blocked that one. I was like, I'm getting a staph infection. Faux show.
So Paul and I go to South Africa and we spend like a week and a half out in South Africa. I would say it was over Thanksgiving. And Cape Town is gorgeous. They've got a little geographical feature called Table Mountain that I would recommend checking out. There are penguins in South Africa. Did you know this?
Those videos were so great. I was like literally weeping. They were so cute. That one with the penguins that were like in a line walking upstairs.
Hopping upstairs.
Yeah.
Because penguins are really ridiculous creatures but they can hop upstairs. They've got little penguin arms. You can imagine that they don't really have much like upper
right. And they were doing it like right in a line, like they were just one after the other, and I was just like wiping tears from my face. Like they're just so cute. Oh my God.
Table Mountain is fantastic. You can stand up on rocks and take photos of yourself or have photos of yourself taken. Selfie or not selfie, choose your own adventure. And the backdrop is just this awesome city, kind of on a bay shape with gorgeous sand beaches and the view is just incredible. And you're up on the top of this mountain, and you can dangle your feet. I took a boomerang on Instagram of dangling my feet off of Table Mountain, which just like on the other side is completely mountainous, and it looks like you're staring into a scene from Jurassic Park. You're just waiting for Littlefoot to come stomping through. I just mixed up my
You did. You like
dino movies.
That was a crossover.
That is a mixed metaphor of dinosaur movies. But anyway, it was fantastic. And then there's a killer wine country out there. And really, I've spent a lot of time in Napa Valley, and this is better. It's better, and it's so much cheaper. And the service and food and everything is just incredible out there. But they have a crazy water crisis going on.
Yeah, it sounds like it. That's some intense shit.
We stayed in a hotel, and all of the bathtub drains had been removed. They want you to drink bottled water because they're trying to keep their reserves up. And so bottled water is sold at cost or free in most places, which you cannot get as tap water. And they are very clear that they expect you to take at max a 5-minute shower. You can lather up your body, turn off the water, turn it on to rinse it off, turn it off again, like just a lot of on and off with the faucets.
Listen, not to be dramatic, but turning off the shower mid-shower and be like, that's some Guantanamo shit. That you can't do that to me.
They're running out of water though, and then what happens when they actually do run out of water? Like, do people riot? I mean, it's crazy to me. And
it's weird because it's kind of like almost like the city of the future, just because this is a problem that's projected to continue to like rise throughout the world. They're just like the first city to actually run out of water.
Right. And I mean, it's sad and an incredible case study. Being there was just, it was crazy. And you got to see like what I grew up in Northern California. There are droughts all the time out in California. Just like, what time is it? It's drought time out in California. Doesn't rain much out there. And Cape Town, 10 times worse. And every time we got in a cab or in an Uber, every so often there was a PSA from the government saying, you really need to limit your water. We are in a severe water crisis, and we do not want to run out. You do not want to see what happens when the water runs out. And then my next question is like, well, shit, what happens when the water runs out?
Right. Yeah. What does that look like?
So that was always at the front of our minds.
What's lovely about Holland is that this whole place, like the land is just basically like a partially submerged sponge.
Right.
We have no water shortages here.
No, they have cemented up and put AstroTurf on top of all of the fountains that used to spout water in the city, which is crazy. I was watching them cement them up.
Wow.
But several of them most of them had already been closed up. But just looking at those structures that used to spout water, and now there's cement and AstroTurf in them, and it was...
They like literally can't use their water for wishes anymore. They're like serious shit only people. Listen, the stars are a renewable resource. You wish on that shit.
Exactly. I got to go cage diving with sharks, though. That was very cool. I went into the ocean water in the middle of the ocean. Well, not in the middle, but like, out in the ocean, and got dunked in a cage without any kind of like breathing apparatuses. The way that it works is you just jump on into that cage, and then they kind of sink you down, and there's like 4 inches, maybe 6, worth of breathing room at the top if you want to catch a breath, and maybe a mouthful of salty, chummy ocean water.
That just sounds like a real Saw scenario. Like, I feel like that would scare me more than the sharks. Would just be like being in a cage in the water. I just feel like things could go wrong.
No, so you know what? I'm exaggerating. There was more than 6 inches. I would say maybe 18 inches up at the top, because you had to have your ears out of the water because the boat captain would yell, "Shark!" And then you were expected to grab the bars in front of you and then push yourself underwater and stay there and look at whatever shark you could see based on the direction the guy was telling you to look at. And I had the prime real estate. So here's a pro tip if you ever go shark cage diving. You want to be on the outside corner, because otherwise, because there are 4 of you in the cage, and so you want to be one of the 2 people on the edges, because then you get an unobstructed view of the sharkery coming 6 inches away from your face. I got to look at a 13-foot shark right in its sharky little eye, and I was like, I don't want to say that made a man out of me, you know, like I don't want to say that made a woman out of me, because that's kind of weirder, even, but it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life.
Just a face full of apex predator.
Yeah. And then I felt very predatory.
Oh,
you know,
you're like, I'm a shark.
Yeah.
Look at me.
Yeah, but I was like the smart shark in the cage, just like, you can't even get me, man. I hope you like those fish heads.
Right.
There's not more where that came from. We're about to go home now.
Right.
You know?
Tricked you.
Yeah, you definitely want to eat before you go out on that boat, because they will just give you little like handy snacks. And it's a long day out there. So eat ahead of time, I would say. Other than that, South Africa was great. And from there, I had Christmas with Paul in Amsterdam. Did a whole like friends thing. That was very cool while you were celebrating Christmas in Ohio. And then on December 29th, you flew out to meet me.
I did. And I was so excited. It was lovely being home. Actually, I was kind of nervous about what that would look like, because like I said, you know, I left and I felt like I was coming back this totally different person. So there was this part of me that was kind of like anxious about that, but it was great. I got to see my friends and family, and, you know, got to go see a Cavs game, and like got to, you know, do all of that stuff and enjoy Christmas. But at the same time, it was weird to spend 6 weeks there. It was great to like that, because that gave me time to catch up with everybody. But at the same time, I felt kind of stuck, you know, because I was suddenly like back in this life that like I still love and that I miss, but that like isn't the life I'm choosing right now.
Right.
And, you know, you were already in Amsterdam and like in our place. And
by myself alone. I got to spend a month alone in an Amsterdam apartment, which was interesting.
Yeah. And I was just feeling like I was so ready. I was just so ready. And so when it was time, as I was driving away from Ohio, because then I still needed to drive the car back to Boston. That still needed to happen. So I drove from Ohio. See what happens when you don't
in the
check.
snow in my car.
Yeah.
Right. So like this whole time I remember, because you had booked your flight from Boston and you had to drive my car from Ohio to Boston.
Yeah. And then get on a plane from Boston to Amsterdam.
But that's a big section of the U.S. that likes to get real snowy during that time of year.
I lucked out. I kind of like went right through like the seam between some storms and made it out without anything too serious, which is good, because that car in snow is terrifying. Like I wouldn't have made it. So
no, I like to call her my snowcat. And listen, Zoe comes with a lot of advantages. Zoe is a great car, but which she's not. Everyone has their good points and bad points, and you know her feet like to slide in snow.
Yeah, she struggles in the snow. It's all right, girl. Me too. And
I know, right? On ice,
right? So and as I was driving away from home, I cried, like kind of sobbed, like all the way to the state line, which was like an hour away. Like I really cried, but at the same time, I was like so ready. The hard thing about doing all of this is I really do feel like my heart is now all over the place. Right. You know what I mean? It's back home. It's with people that little pieces of it is like all over the globe.
Even in Acapulco, I left a piece in my heart.
Right. And with people that we've met, you know what I mean?
Right.
They're dragging my heart all over the place on their weird adventures. And it is kind of, I don't know. I was leaving home, but I also really had already started to feel like Amsterdam was home. Not necessarily because I'd been here for so long or anything, but it's just like I had decided on this life, and it was the life that I wanted and the life that I was moving towards, and I was ready to embrace it, you know. So I was kind of going from one home to another, and it's interesting how that felt.
Yeah, I had a little more time to process it here in this apartment. One thing that I wasn't able to process over the holidays was the Dutch obsession with Zwart Piet.
That is
which I got to experience
lot.
in full force, by the way. You were in Ohio, which I'm not holding against you, but while you were in Ohio, I was looking at a lot of Dutch people in full-on blackface celebrating the holidays around December 9th.
Yeah,
December
I'm glad
7th.
I missed that, because to me, that's like the one thing I have learned through this year to be much more tolerant of other people's cultures and that sort of thing. But like, okay, so Zwart Pete.
Literal translation, Black Pete.
Yeah, is like, okay, so we have Santa, and Santa has his little elves. Well, here they don't really do Christmas exactly, but what's the holiday they do? I forget. It's like St. Nicholas.
Sinterklaas.
Yeah. So, anyways, around St. Nicholas time, like beginning of December, they're like, Sinterklaas is coming to town, and we're like, oh, that might sound nice and jolly, except that like he's not the homie, No. This guy comes from Spain.
He does
on a horse.
He does. And instead of leaving cookies out for Santa and his reindeer, you want to leave a carrot in your shoe if you want to be presents, because you got to feed that horse.
A carrot in your shoe. These Dutch weirdos. And then, but instead of having elves come in with him or whatever, he has his little helpers are the Zwart Petes, and they come from somewhere down south, as in like south of Spain.
Yeah, just somewhere down south.
Somewhere
guys.
south of Spain, and they come on a ship. And Zwart Pete is literally just wearing like some kind of like clown kind of jester costume.
Yes. Yeah, like maybe old-timey. He's got like a fancy hat.
Right? And then these Dutch people paint their faces,
their ears,
their ears,
hands.
Everything.
They go full black face, with the exception of their red lips.
Their giant overdrawn red lips.
Jocelyn Wildstein looking, just not.
And there's just mobs of them. And they're like, this is fine. It's for the kids.
It's for the kids. This delights the children. It's part of our culture. How dare you be offended by this?
Yeah, like this isn't racist. And they're like, they say he's dirty from coming down the chimney. First of all, I have seen goddamn few chimneys in Amsterdam.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Looking around here,
I'm not seeing a lot of chimneys.
No, there are not a lot of chimneys, no.
Second of all, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. That is blackface, and you know that it fucking is.
Absolutely.
And you know that it's fucked up.
Uh-huh.
You know that it is.
But the gleeful way in which they will just full-on blackface themselves and then act like it's okay and get kind of like offended that you might even suggest that it might be racist in this day and age. Like, they don't have the goddamn internet. And they don't know better. You know better than that.
No, and honestly, if you look around Amsterdam, there are like little Zwart Piet figurines that they keep out year round in like all kinds of restaurants and stuff. Like, it's a real point of pride. And it's just like wildly uncomfortable.
They post this on their social media profiles. If you want to match up with a dude on Tinder, or if you do match up with a dude on Tinder and you guys get to the point where you're on your Facebook friends, go ahead and scroll through those photos, because if you're probably going to find a Zwart Piet if he's a local.
Right. No, it's like, and you've got to watch for it. You've got to, like, the questions you ask right off the bat. What do you do?
Are you married?
How tall are you?
Are you dressed as Zwart Piet?
Do you have blackface paint at your house?
Yeah, seriously.
Because yeah, that's a lot.
No, and all of these, and the Dutch are ultra white. They're just blonde haired, fair skinned, unless they've been tanning.
The only way to even describe the Netherlands is just to say that it is literally the whitest place I've ever been.
I'm from New Hampshire, and I say that this is like, just and these white people just full on blackface and so happy about it, just like skipping around town in their blackface, just like hordes of Dutch people dressed in blackface skipping around town, going to bars. Just, it's for the children. And I'm like, I don't think it is.
I don't think it is. You wouldn't like this so much, because the other thing is they don't even like costumes here. They don't do Halloween.
No, we'll get to New Year's next, but like they don't even pop a sequin on New Year's. We'll get to that. But
no, like you can't get these people to dress up unless there's blackface involved. And I'm like, yes. It's absurd. Like, I don't even necessarily mean to come on. I mean, listen, it's unacceptable, but like, I don't even, it's interesting when you go to different countries and you see like other people's racism is so jarring and weird. And it's so funny because like the racism that comes from like the place that you are born and raised, it's easy to, I mean, that's part of what privilege is that like it's so pervasive that you don't even see it. You know what I mean? But believe other people's racism is not so wily and ambiguous. Like you can pick out other people's racism real fast, and it's always bizarre. It's always like, you guys are doing the most. Like, can you not?
That Zwart Pete thing really came out of nowhere for me. And the first time I was told about it, I thought that somebody was just lying to me. I thought that there was like let's take advantage of gullible Kari and see how far we can lead her down this road. No, it actually exists.
Well, and I thought maybe it was like a thing that like some people like backwoodsy type people still did, or like, because listen, believe that back in the US we've all got our unfortunate relations that we're embarrassed of, who like
still pull teeth by like tying a string around the tooth and then slamming a door,
right? You know, and like that kind of shit, and like we've all got that racist uncle, you know what I mean? God damn, no, it's a pretty pervasive thing out here.
So you come out right after the holidays, but still smack dab in the middle of the light festival out here. Amsterdam lights the hell up for the holidays, and they've got a light festival on all of the canals, and it's really spectacular to see. And you came just in time to check that out.
Well, it was so great because actually the first time I ever came here was during the light festival years ago, and that was when the first time I really fell in love with Amsterdam, and I was so charmed. And it was because as I was walking around, even though it was January and gray or whatever, they string these streets with like, there's just giant chandeliers hanging in the middle of the streets and that sort of thing. And
it's so cool looking.
And it's just like very charming. You can't help but, you know, you can almost forget about Zwart Pete.
It made me happy I moved here, just seeing all of that and seeing how completely unique and charming this city is. And I moved here. It's my city now. Like, I get this. I get to look at this. I moved to a place where I get to do all kinds of cool things. The culture here is fantastic. The restaurants. Listen, the service is going to be slow, but we have found some incredible places to eat here. The produce is really good. The grocery stores everywhere. Do you want a juice? They have juice all the time available. It's a healthier city. People are biking all of the time. The weather's nice when it's, you know, not winter.
Yeah, I was definitely looking forward to the lifestyle, and I wanted that. When I was home for 6 weeks, I did an okay job of continuing to like go to the gym and that sort of thing. I ran my first 5K with my siblings, which was really cool.
That was on your bucket list.
Yeah, so that was really exciting for me. But I also, you know, I was still working out, but I was not as good about it. And the food thing, let me tell you, I'm sorry, I didn't even know just what a culinary mecca Akron, Ohio was. But I was all over that shit. It was like not the best situation. So I was lucky. I was excited to come back to a place where it's not just the onslaught of food in Ohio, just like the way people eat and what they eat, and believe I was happy to just get right back in there. You know what I mean? But I was like, no, this is not. It's just so much easier to make good choices here because like those are the easiest choices to make, and it's the choices that everyone else is making too.
Right. And
I need that kind of supervision and peer pressure.
It's helpful to have an extra set of very judgy Dutch eyes on you. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now you're back at this point in the workationing story, and it's New Year's. So do you want to talk about New Year's, and then maybe we can wrap this episode and
then maybe we'll
pick up in 2018.
Yeah, I like it. So New Year's Eve was incredible, actually, and which was great because I had come back specifically, and New Year's Eve is actually really important to me. It's like my favorite holiday. I just love I guess I've always maybe had this desire for like, you know, starting anew and like what are my new goals and like, you know, so it's kind of great. So I love New Year's, and every year my friends back home throw this huge New Year's Eve party, and it's like a tradition, and I love it. It's my favorite party of the year. So it was a big deal for me to decide to leave early, but I just felt really strongly that I wanted to spend New Year's Eve in my new home and like start fresh. It just felt like the right thing to do, and we really wanted it to be a really good night, and we lucked out because it was
incredible. The Dutch don't really turn up for anything except for King's Day and New Year's Eve, and they will shoot fireworks at tourists on the street. Everyone shoots fireworks in this crowded
and
ass
this
city.
isn't tiny shit. We're talking professional grade fireworks, shit that's illegal in like lots of places in the U.S. You can't even fucking get this stuff.
Even here, it's illegal. A lot of I hear that people imported them from Germany because you can just drive across that border with.
Yeah, and everyone you talk to for the few days beforehand, everyone is just like, "Where are we getting these fireworks?" Like everyone's just like,
"Who's going to Germany?"
Right? And then they shoot them off in the middle of the streets. And the streets here, I mean, this city has looked this way for what, like fucking 400 years? These are some narrow streets.
Right.
The buildings are close to each other. There is not a lot of like green space or open space here. So when they're doing this, you were just in the mix with just like, it's like a war zone.
It is. If you're a veteran who has PTSD, maybe avoid Amsterdam on New Year's Eve.
Right? I know. And then people talk like I can't even imagine what all the like pets and everything are doing that day. Just like,
my God, because somebody came to the New Year's Eve party that we were at and was telling a story about how they watched as somebody, they couldn't see who, threw like a wad of firecrackers underneath a park bench as they walked by, and two people were sitting on the park bench, and the joke is like, haha, there's like a firecracker under your ass. But like those people jumped up, freaked the fuck out. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right. No, because that's fucking scary.
That's extreme. I don't think that's haha funny, guys.
No, it's like the purge out there, because these Dutch people, they're actually like, listen, they are blunt and they will judge you with their eyes. But in general, Dutch people are fairly polite. Like they're nice. You know what I mean? It's not an unfriendly place at all. And so it was so weird to me to see people being like actually kind of like weirdly violently aggressive with these fireworks, because that's like not the vibe of this place.
No.
And usually if someone's acting like an asshole, let's be real, it's a big group of tourists. Like there was some mob of British people like acting up a few weeks ago. Like there's that kind of thing. But it's not the Dutch people. So to watch them, but it's just like, it's just part of their culture.
Yeah,
they just love the shit.
Gleeful about it. You know, just, haha, look at those tourists run.
Right?
And I'm like, guys, it's a lot though.
But we were lucky. So we were not on the street for the height of it. We were actually at this dope party.
Paul scored an invite it's his friend's house. So Paul got invited, and then we got invited to Paul's friend's New Year's Eve party, and his place is incredible.
Yeah, it's like over by the train station by Amsterdam Central, and he's up high, and you just get a view. It's like on the water, and there's just a view of like the whole city. And I can't even explain what it was like at midnight when those fireworks went off, because it was like every single, like I said, on basically every block of the whole city, people are setting off like professional fireworks. Mm-hmm. You've never seen so many fireworks just as far as the eye could see in every direction. It was the wildest thing.
Well, because Amsterdam is so flat, or the Netherlands in general, real flat.
Yeah.
So up high, you could see just for miles people shooting off fireworks. And it was like the landscape was so flat, and these fireworks would pop up, and it was like these exploding flowers in the sky on this flat landscape, and it was cool to see. I'm so grateful that we got to experience New Year's that way, because when you're down low, you can only see what's around you, and up high you got to see everyone was celebrating at the same time, and that celebration didn't just last for like 20 minutes, it lasted for like 4 hours.
No, it was so fun, and like people at the party were getting into it, and like going downstairs and setting off fireworks. Oh my god, people will appreciate this. The guy whose party it was, there were a lot of expats there. He's American, and he had smuggled in, because it's fucking illegal here, he had smuggled in Velveeta, because like they won't even sell like a cheese product. A cheese product.
It's not real cheese. It's not cheesy enough, and so you can't have it out here. But he smuggled that in along with some Rotel.
And you know that. Oh, and everybody was like, oh, ha ha ha, and like that's gross, and like laughing about it. But then as soon as he made it in this big crock pot, you better believe everyone was just like crowded around it, like,
these Dutch people were just like dripping Rotel and melted Velveeta back into the crock pot. It was not cute. Nobody had any tact about it. Nobody had tasted that before. Nobody had tasted freedom, is what that is.
No, like Velveeta with Rotel is just like one of the best, like the top 10 things you can put in your mouth.
Listen, it's trash.
I don't care if it's disgusting.
You get one of those,
me it's
like,
not delicious.
Tostitos scoops and just fill that little tortilla boat full of that Rotella and Velveeta. Oh my God, it's trash. It's just trash food, but God, it tastes good.
And and the party got turned for that stuff. Like everybody was like, yes.
Also, our Fireball. I found a liquor store out here that sells Fireball cinnamon whiskey.
Yeah, that's another thing. That's our like new signature move, because everyone will make fun of you for bringing Fireball, and the Fireball will be gone before anything else.
No. People cannot get enough of it. We brought it to a party and they tried to carbonate it. They use their soda stream to just let's just make a Fireball soda. And I was like, I don't know about that, guys. But all right, let's give it a shot. See how it goes. Not well, incidentally. You probably want to like thin that out.
Yeah,
too viscous,
you should.
I think. But anyway, Fireball goes down great at a party.
It does. Speaking of things going down great at a party, though, I started the year with my my good deed of the year. I'm done now.
Are we gonna tell this story?
I think we should.
Okay, all right. Listen, here are the rules to telling this story. No names.
No names. No company names.
No company names.
No identifying information.
No identifying no job titles. All right. Okay.
Right. Yeah. To protect the fucking messy.
So. We are in our mid to late 27s. This was a very classy party and this was a very, very nice apartment.
Yeah, that was the nicest apartment I've been to in Amsterdam.
Yes.
Like, it's very nice, and this was very nice. And besides the Velveeta and Rotella, there was sushi and like fine wine, and like this was a classy thing, right? However, some ladies who we didn't know, but like who other people at the party knew through.
They came as a guest of somebody, but the host did not know who they were.
Yeah, the host didn't know them, but they were somebody's guest. And these ladies showed up drunk and then got just
drunker.
Just crunked. Just all the way wasted.
I'm going to put them at 22 to 25.
Yeah.
They were the youngest people at the party, I would say. Kelly and I are still holding steady in our mid to late 27. So it's been a while since we were in college, but these ladies look like they might have just came straight from a frat party,
right? Right, and they were getting wild, and we were like slowing down because we're like, we got to walk home through this war zone. You know what I mean? Like
there were like a lot of very professional people there. Do you know what I mean? Like fun. Don't get me wrong, and it was not at all a stuffy party, but these ladies were out of place. I would say their behavior.
Yeah, and it basically culminated with them destroying.
So I look over at one point. It's like shortly after midnight. Like I'm going to call it a smooth 12:15. Mm-hmm. I look over and down this hallway, I see a lady, one of these two ladies. And I'm actually like standing up and describing it now.
Yeah, I don't know what you think this is going to do.
Her legs. So she's like standing up straight, but bent over at the hip. Her legs are straight and kind of V'd out. Her legs are approximately spread as wide apart as the hallway itself, maybe a little bit less. And I'm like, what is she doing? I thought that maybe she was stretching, but then I heard and saw all of this splat, and she just like projectile vomited directly onto the floor of this very nice apartment at this New Year's party. And I watched her do it, and I was just like, you are right outside of the bathroom. What is going on?
Well, what was going on was that her friend was already in there puking and not doing a good job of hitting the target.
Well, nobody knew that, though, so that's still a secret, right? Nobody knows this. And so sister tosses her cookies, and then the person who I guess invited her to the party quickly grabbed some towels and commenced with the cleaning, which I thought was appropriate, and he seemed to do a good job, right? But then later on I had to pee. And as we know, I've got a weak stomach, and so I go into the bathroom and immediately am confronted with just the
horror.
It's I don't even want to talk about it because I don't want to be vulgar. She somehow managed to just like puke all over this bathroom. And then it looked like she might have tried to clean it a little bit, but not really. But then also, why is there piss on the floor?
Also, why is there piss on the floor? Which was like a whole curveball. And it was like, is this water? Was she trying to clean it up? No, girl, that's pee.
That's what I thought too.
Just like in the corner. Like someone had like peed in the corner of the bathroom. And this is a small bathroom. We're talking like a water closet, by the way, which is pretty common out here for like that to be separate from the rest of your bathroom.
No. And so like I see, because there's like puke splats on the wall and stuff, but like the smell is real bad. And then my feet I'm stepping in some, no, not water. That is piss and it smells like it. And I just come out of that bathroom and the first face I see is Kelly's.
Yeah. You looked like you had been through a war. I was just like, Jesus Christ, what happened to you? And then I was like, like, oh no, like this is bad.
Oh no, it's really bad. Kelly and I were just talking about this when one of us says, "Oh no!" Like that is literally the worst sound. That's like some real shit is going down right now, and I can only vocalize, "Oh no!"
Yeah,
just dear God, no.
Yeah, that was really bad, and it was the only bathroom.
Right, I think that I'm sure that there was one. I know that there was one attached to one or both of the bedrooms, but that's the one that was like open for people to use.
Right.
And yeah, so I tell Kelly what's going down in there, and Kelly, like a total fucking champion, just says, "You know what, host? Don't you even worry about that. I got this."
I just felt called. I don't know why.
To clean this like pissy pukey bathroom.
I was just in a real good mood, and like I was just like, you know what? I think I was like channeling like my mother. Like the women in my mom's family, they like really take pride in like cleaning the fuck out of something.
Right.
And I was like, you know what? This is my good deed for the year. And I went in there. I like got a garbage bag and like like 2 rolls of paper towels.
You needed a lot and some towels.
Yeah, I found some
piss.
I found some gloves. And at the end, I was like trying to like wash off the gloves, and the host was just like, "Oh no, girl, you just throw all of that away." He's like, "You just go right on ahead and throw that."
Fuck those towels. I never liked them anyway.
Yeah, he was just like, all of this can go, and I was like, I like the way you think. But I did it, and then I was like, all right, that was my good deed for the year.
No, I thought that was a
nobody
very
come
nice
asking because I'm tapped out.
No, because what's shittier than that, honestly, is like you open up your house to friends to bring their friends, and you're having a party and a good time, and you're trying to keep it classy, and it is fucking classy, actually. Like, pardon my French, I know that's not very classy, but like this was a really cool event, and it was a great opportunity. And tell me where else. How many people got to see those fireworks from that view?
No, I felt really lucky.
And then these girls just puke in his hallway and then like projectile vomit all over the bathroom and then finish that off with a hot piss on the floor. Just like I cannot even imagine.
No, I wonder how their night turned out, because after that happened, they just pieced out.
Yeah.
Because I think they just like couldn't even, and they were like, oh no. Like we got
oh no. Yeah, they had their own oh no moment.
Because then they just ghosted. They was like, bye. Like, have fun with that. And I'm just like, God. And you know what? Some of those people like had to see each other
at work.
And I was just like, I'm glad that's not me having to have that awkward ass conversation.
No. Can you imagine like seeing that person in the hallway? I don't know. Are you the one who puked in the hallway, or are you the one who like?
Are you the one who pissed in the corner? Which one are you? Also, like, why did you piss in the corner?
The toilet was right there. Here's how I know that you weren't puking into the toilet, because you were literally puking everywhere else. So like that toilet space was occupied. You could have just sat there.
Right. You could have done that. It's just spared us all a lot.
Can you pick one or the other at least? Like, Christ, you missed both shots, lady?
Yeah. But listen, I handled it.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
I exorcised that demon.
And the host was grateful, because can you imagine, like, you open up your home, you throw a great party, you spend all this money on food and booze and et cetera, and like on top of that, your thanks for that is to clean up some other ladies. I'm trying to keep it nice. I'm not gonna use a derogatory term. These are ladies, just classy ladies with real jobs who should know better than to piss on a floor.
Yeah. I think they definitely teach that at some point. Somewhere. I learned it.
Do you think that there's a 102 course on that?
Right.
Is it all covered in 101?
I'm not even sure. Number 1, 101.
Then there's 102?
Yeah.
Okay, so want to wrap up here, and then we can pick up in 2018. But that's what we were up to at the end of the year last year. I know that was a lot. It was a lot for us too, and we fell a little behind, but we're about to catch y'all up.
Yes, and so next time we will talk about Amsterdam and what's been going on here and what the visa process looks like and all the crazy things that have been keeping us from keeping you caught up.
Right.
But we're going to fix it. We're fixing it. It's happening. Okay, goodbye.
Bye.
This has been another episode of the Workationing Podcast. If you like what you've heard here, please consider donating at patreon.com/workationing. That's patreon.com. All proceeds will go towards funding our bucket list items.
To keep up with us in real time, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all at Workationing. Or on our website at, you guessed it, workationing.com. That's workationing.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Yeah, and I just said let's pop a squat there. So let's.
What's wrong with popping a squat, Gringa?
Doesn't that mean pee?
No.
Yeah, you pop a squat.
No, it means you sit down.
No, then you would just take a knee.
No, that's a squat and a knee are not the same thing.
No, listen, I know, because when you pop a squat, you're peeing in an alley in between two cars.
Maybe you are. Sometimes I just sit.
No, you're like out in the woods. That's what that meant when camping. Just like you're going to go pop a squat in the woods.
They tell us that in school, like pop a squat.
They do not.
I don't think they meant they wanted us all to pee.